In the quiet suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek, life moved at a gentle pace. The streets were lined with neatly trimmed lawns, colorful flower beds, and families who waved hello as they passed each other on their morning walks. Among these residents was Sarah Harper, a kind-hearted woman in her mid-40s who had lived in her cozy home for over a decade. Her house wasn't the biggest or fanciest on the block, but it stood out for one reason: her backyard. It was a small paradise, bursting with life all year round. Sarah took immense pride in her garden. Rows of vibrant flowers painted the space with every color imaginable, while vegetable patches yielded fresh produce she often shared with her neighbors. Fruit trees shaded the area, offering cool spots to sit during hot summer afternoons. But what truly made her garden special was how lush and green it stayed even during the driest months. This wasn't just luck. It was thanks to an intricate irrigation system Sarah had installed herself years ago. When Sarah first moved into her home, she quickly realized that maintaining such a beautiful garden required more than just hard work. It needed water, and lots of it. The local climate could be unpredictable, with scorching summers and occasional droughts. Determined not to let her plants suffer, she hired a professional to design and install an underground irrigation network. What most people didn't know, however, was that part of this system ran beneath the neighboring property owned by the Homeowners Association, HOA. At the time, Sarah had obtained legal permission for this arrangement through an easement agreement, a document granting her rights to use a small portion of the HOA's land for her irrigation lines. The years went by, and the easement slipped from everyone's memory, including Sarah's. She never gave it much thought because everything worked perfectly. Her garden thrived, and no one ever questioned why her plants always looked so healthy. Life was peaceful, predictable, and pleasant. Sarah spent her weekends tending to her flowers, chatting with neighbors over coffee, and enjoying the simple joys of suburban living. But beneath the surface of this idyllic existence lay something unexpected: a ticking time bomb. The HOA board members changed frequently, and old records weren't always reviewed carefully. As newer members joined, they became less familiar with past agreements and decisions. Meanwhile, Sarah continued caring for her garden, blissfully unaware that trouble might be brewing just beyond her fence line. Willow Creek seemed like the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. People joked about how boring it was compared to big cities, but Sarah loved its calmness. Little did she know, her peaceful world was about to be turned upside down. Somewhere deep underground, hidden pipes carried water silently to her plants, oblivious to the storm that would soon erupt above them. For now, though, Sarah remained focused on her daily routines, watering her flowers and watching butterflies dance among the blossoms, completely unaware of the chaos waiting around the corner. One sunny morning, as Sarah sipped her coffee on the back porch, she noticed a flyer tucked under her front door. It was an official notice from the Homeowners Association, HOA, announcing upcoming construction work on their property adjacent to hers. The HOA planned to install new drainage pipes to manage stormwater runoff more effectively. At first glance, it seemed like a routine project, something that would benefit the entire neighborhood by preventing flooding during heavy rains. But as Sarah read further, her heart sank. The construction plans included digging trenches along the edge of her property, dangerously close to where her primary irrigation line lay buried. She immediately felt uneasy. Memories of the easement agreement flickered in her mind, though she hadn't thought about it in years. Unsure if the HOA even remembered its existence, Sarah decided to take action. That afternoon, she visited the HOA office to discuss her concerns with the board members. Sitting across from her were three unfamiliar faces, newcomers who had joined the board recently. They listened politely as Sarah explained the situation, showing them copies of the old easement documents. According to the agreement, her irrigation lines ran beneath their property, and any excavation near that area could cause serious damage. However, instead of reassurance, Sarah was met with skepticism. One member shrugged dismissively, saying, "We don't have any record of this easement. Are you sure it's still valid?" Another chimed in, "Even if it is, "We can't stop the project now. It's already been approved." Frustrated but determined, Sarah pressed on. She offered to mark the exact location of her irrigation lines herself to avoid accidents. The board reluctantly agreed, promising to pass along the information to the construction crew. Still, Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that they weren't taking her concerns seriously. Over the next few days, she kept a close eye on the preparations, watching workers set up equipment near her fence line. Each time she saw them, her stomach churned with worry. Despite her efforts to flag the potential danger, communication between Sarah and the HOA remained strained. No one seemed willing to double-check the records or verify the easement's validity. Instead, there was an air of indifference, as if her garden, and the hard work behind it, wasn't worth protecting. The tension grew thicker with each passing day, turning what should have been a straightforward discussion into something far more contentious. As the construction date approached, Sarah found herself losing sleep. What if they hit her irrigation line? How would she keep her garden alive without water? She tried reasoning with the HOA again, sending emails and leaving voicemails, but her messages went unanswered. It felt like shouting into a void. Her once tranquil life was slowly unraveling, replaced by anxiety and frustration. The peaceful rhythm of Willow Creek now felt distant, overshadowed by the looming threat of destruction. Then came the day the digging began. From her kitchen window, Sarah watched as machines roared to life, tearing into the earth just feet away from her prized garden. Every scrape of the shovel sent a jolt of dread through her body. She wanted to intervene, to scream at them to stop, but she knew it wouldn't help. All she could do was wait and hope for the best. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the sinking feeling that her worst fears were about to come true. The sound of heavy machinery echoed through Sarah's backyard as the construction crew began their work. She stood by her kitchen window, gripping a cup of tea she hadn't touched in over an hour. Her eyes darted between the workers outside and the vibrant garden that had been her sanctuary for years. Every scrape of the shovel made her heart race faster. "Please don't hit it," she whispered to herself, though she knew deep down that hope was fading fast. It didn't take long for disaster to strike. Midway through the second day of digging, there was a sudden gush of water erupting from the ground near her fence line. Workers scrambled to shut off their equipment as muddy streams spilled onto the grass. Sarah rushed outside, her heart pounding. "What happened?" she demanded, trying to stay calm despite the chaos unfolding before her eyes. One of the workers pointed to the broken pipe exposed in the trench, her main irrigation line, severed cleanly in two. Sarah felt like the ground beneath her feet had crumbled. Without this system, her entire garden would wither under the relentless summer sun. The sight of water spilling uselessly into the dirt filled her with anger and despair. She turned to the foreman, who looked just as shocked but offered little comfort. "We didn't know it was there," he said apologetically, though his words did nothing to ease her frustration. Determined to hold someone accountable, Sarah marched straight to the HOA office the next morning. Armed with copies of the easement agreement and photos of the damage, she confronted the board members yet again. This time, however, her tone was sharper, her patience worn thin. "You ignored my warnings," she said firmly, slamming the documents onto the table. "Now look what's happened." To her surprise, the board didn't outright deny responsibility this time. Instead, they appeared genuinely confused. After some back and forth, one member admitted they had never reviewed the old records when planning the project. "If we'd known about the easement, we would have been more careful," another added hesitantly. But their apology rang hollow to Sarah. Careful planning should have prevented this mess in the first place. As tempers flared, something unexpected occurred during the heated exchange. A worker arrived at the HOA office, looking sheepish but eager to share news. While attempting to repair the damaged line, the crew had stumbled upon something unusual, a second pipe running even deeper underground. It seemed to follow a similar path as the original line, but was cleverly concealed and reinforced. No one on the HOA board had any idea it existed. Sarah couldn't help but smile faintly at their baffled expressions. She revealed that years ago, after installing the primary irrigation system, she had secretly added a backup line as a precaution. This secondary network ensured her garden would survive even if the main line failed. What the HOA didn't realize was that this backup line also fell under the same easement agreement, making it legally protected just like the first. The revelation left the room in stunned silence. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond. For Sarah, it was both vindication and a moment of quiet triumph. She had prepared for the worst-case scenario long ago, and now that foresight was paying off. Still, the discovery only complicated matters further. If the HOA had unknowingly disrupted not one but two of her lines, what did that mean for their liability? And how could they possibly move forward without causing even more harm? The tension in the room was palpable, but Sarah remained composed. She knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The discovery of the hidden backup irrigation line sent shockwaves through the HOA boardroom. Sarah's secret addition to her underground system, which she had installed years earlier as a precaution, was now front and center in the escalating conflict. The HOA members were baffled. Not only had they damaged Sarah's primary line, but they had also disrupted a secondary network they knew nothing about. This revelation forced both sides into mediation, an attempt to resolve the growing tension before it spiraled further out of control. At the first mediation session, tempers flared almost immediately. The HOA representatives accused Sarah of withholding critical information about the backup line, claiming that her failure to disclose its existence complicated matters unnecessarily. "You can't just bury pipes under our property without telling us," one member argued, his voice rising with frustration. Sarah, however, remained calm and composed. She explained that the backup line was part of the original easement agreement and had been legally permitted just like the primary line. "It's all documented," she said firmly, sliding copies of the paperwork across the table. "You just didn't bother to check." The mediator, a neutral third party brought in to facilitate discussions, urged both sides to focus on finding solutions rather than assigning blame. But old grievances lingered, making productive dialogue difficult. Sarah felt betrayed by the HOA's dismissive attitude during the initial stages of the dispute, while the board members struggled to understand why Sarah hadn't done more to ensure they were aware of the full extent of her irrigation system. Each side dug in their heels, unwilling to budge. As the sessions continued, cracks began to show within the HOA itself. Some members privately admitted that Sarah had a point. They should have reviewed the records more carefully before starting construction. Others, however, clung to their belief that the responsibility lay solely with Sarah for not being upfront enough. These internal divisions weakened the HOA's position, leaving them scrambling to present a united front. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself questioning whether mediation would lead anywhere meaningful. Her patience was wearing thin, and the stress of the situation was taking a toll on her health. Back in Willow Creek, news of the mediation spread quickly among neighbors. Opinions were divided, with some siding strongly with Sarah and others defending the HOA. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. A few residents tried to stay neutral, fearing that choosing sides might damage relationships. Others used the opportunity to air long-standing grievances, turning what should have been a straightforward legal issue into a neighborhood-wide debate about fairness, accountability, and trust. Despite the chaos, there were moments of clarity. During one particularly heated exchange, the mediator posed a simple yet powerful question: "What kind of community do you want to live in?" His words struck a chord, forcing everyone to pause and reflect. For Sarah, the answer was clear: a place where people respected each other's rights and worked together to solve problems. For the HOA, it was a reminder that their actions carried weight and could either unite or divide the neighborhood. Though progress was slow, these small breakthroughs kept hope alive. By the end of the mediation process, both sides agreed to take the dispute to court if no resolution could be reached. It was a sobering realization that their inability to compromise might lead to even greater consequences. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one thing was certain: the outcome would shape the future of Willow Creek for years to come. As Sarah left the final mediation session, she couldn't help but wonder whether justice, or forgiveness, would ultimately prevail. The legal battle between Sarah and the HOA quickly became the talk of Willow Creek. What had started as a simple dispute over irrigation lines spiraled into a full-blown courtroom drama, dividing the neighborhood in ways no one could have anticipated. On one side were those who sympathized with Sarah, neighbors who admired her garden and believed she was standing up for her rights. On the other were those who sided with the HOA, fearing that ruling in Sarah's favor might set a dangerous precedent for future conflicts involving shared property. Sarah hired a lawyer named Mark, a sharp and determined man known for his expertise in property law. Together, they gathered evidence to build their case. Old maps, easement agreements, and expert testimonies piled up on their side of the table. Mark argued passionately that the HOA had acted negligently by failing to verify the existence of Sarah's irrigation lines before starting construction. He emphasized how the damage had not only disrupted her water supply, but also threatened the survival of her beloved garden, a project she had poured years of effort and care into. Meanwhile, the HOA brought in their own team of lawyers, who countered that the easement agreement was outdated and poorly documented. They claimed that Sarah should have done more to inform them about the backup line, arguing that its presence complicated matters further. The HOA also pointed out that repairing the damage would require significant resources, which could burden the community financially. Their defense painted Sarah as someone who had kept secrets rather than being transparent. As the case dragged on, tensions escalated both inside and outside the courtroom. Neighbors who once exchanged friendly waves now avoided eye contact or whispered behind closed doors. Some accused Sarah of stirring unnecessary trouble, while others criticized the HOA for being dismissive and arrogant. Even Sarah's closest friends found themselves caught in the crossfire, unsure whether to support her publicly or stay neutral. During one particularly heated session, an expert witness hired by Sarah testified about the importance of maintaining proper records for easements. He explained that such agreements were designed to protect both parties and prevent exactly this kind of conflict. His words struck a chord with the judge, who began asking tougher questions of the HOA's representatives. Why hadn't they reviewed the records? Why did they proceed without confirming the location of Sarah's lines? Each question seemed to chip away at the HOA's credibility. Despite the mounting pressure, Sarah remained resolute. She attended every hearing, dressed in her most professional attire, her face calm but determined. Inside, though, she was exhausted. The emotional toll of the lawsuit weighed heavily on her, compounded by the financial strain of paying legal fees. Late at night, she often sat alone in her dimly lit kitchen, staring at the wilting plants in her backyard. It broke her heart to see her once thriving garden struggling to survive, a constant reminder of everything she stood to lose. But Sarah refused to give up. She reminded herself why she was fighting, not just for her garden, but for fairness and accountability. If the HOA could ignore her rights so easily, what would stop them from doing the same to others? Her resolve only grew stronger with each passing day, fueling her determination to see the case through to the end. Back in Willow Creek, the community braced itself for the outcome. Everyone knew the verdict would have far-reaching implications, not just for Sarah and the HOA, but for how disputes like this would be handled in the future. For now, all they could do was wait and wonder. Would justice prevail, or would the cracks in their peaceful neighborhood widen even further? After months of heated arguments, sleepless nights, and endless paperwork, the judge finally delivered a verdict that sent ripples through Willow Creek. In a decisive ruling, the court sided with Sarah, affirming her legal rights under the easement agreement. The HOA was ordered to cover all repair costs for both the primary and backup irrigation lines, as well as compensate Sarah for the damage caused to her garden. It was a clear win, but the decision left no room for ambiguity. Property owners had a responsibility to respect easements, even if they were decades old. The ruling came as a shock to many in the neighborhood. Some cheered quietly, relieved that Sarah's persistence had paid off. Others grumbled about the financial burden it placed on the HOA, worrying about potential increases in association fees. But what surprised everyone most was how quickly the HOA board responded after the dust settled. Instead of dragging their feet or appealing the decision, they issued a public apology during their next meeting. They admitted fault, acknowledging that their failure to verify records had led to the entire mess. What happened next was even more unexpected. A few days after the verdict, two HOA board members, Linda and Tom, showed up at Sarah's doorstep unannounced. Carrying gardening gloves and tools, they offered to help restore her garden. At first, Sarah hesitated, unsure whether to trust their intentions, but Linda's sincere apology softened her resolve. "We messed up," Linda said simply, "and we want to make things right." Sarah agreed to let them assist, though she kept her guard up initially. Over the following weeks, an unlikely partnership formed. Neighbors who had once avoided taking sides began pitching in too, bringing plants, soil, and advice. Slowly but surely, life returned to Sarah's backyard. Flowers bloomed again, vegetables sprouted, and the fruit trees regained their vitality. The act of working together seemed to mend some of the fractures in the community, replacing tension with cooperation. Behind the scenes, the HOA took steps to prevent similar disputes in the future. They hired a consultant to review all property records, ensuring no other forgotten easements lurked beneath the surface. Notices were sent out reminding residents of their rights and responsibilities regarding shared land. Board meetings became more transparent, inviting input from homeowners before approving major projects. For the first time in years, people felt like their voices mattered. For Sarah, the resolution brought not only justice, but also a renewed sense of purpose. She realized how much her garden meant, not just to her, but to the entire neighborhood. Inspired by the support she received, she started hosting small workshops on gardening and property rights, sharing tips on maintaining green spaces while navigating legal challenges. Her efforts sparked conversations among neighbors, fostering a spirit of collaboration that had been missing for far too long. Though scars remained from the ordeal, the community emerged stronger than before. The rift between Sarah and the HOA healed gradually, built on mutual respect and accountability. As the last petals unfurled in her restored garden, Sarah reflected on everything she'd learned. Life in Willow Creek wasn't perfect. It never would be. But sometimes, even the toughest battles could lead to beautiful growth. With the dispute finally behind her, Sarah turned her full attention back to her garden. The HOA's settlement had provided enough funds not only to repair the damaged irrigation lines, but also to upgrade the entire system. Her once hidden backup line was now reinforced and connected to a modern, eco-friendly water-saving mechanism. For the first time in years, her garden wasn't just surviving. It was thriving better than ever before. Vibrant blooms burst forth in every corner, and the vegetable patches yielded more produce than she could possibly use. Neighbors often stopped by to admire her handiwork, some even asking for advice on their own gardens. But Sarah's newfound success wasn't just about plants. It was about people, too. The legal battle had taught her, and everyone else in Willow Creek, a valuable lesson about communication, transparency, and respect for boundaries. What started as a conflict over property rights became an opportunity for growth, not just for Sarah's garden, but for the entire community. She noticed subtle changes in how neighbors interacted with one another. Conversations grew warmer, disagreements were handled more diplomatically, and there was a renewed sense of unity. Determined to keep this positive momentum going, Sarah decided to take on a new role: advocate and educator. Every Saturday morning, she hosted informal gatherings in her backyard, inviting anyone interested to learn about gardening tips, sustainable practices, and the importance of understanding property agreements like easements. Word spread quickly, and soon her little workshops attracted residents from all corners of the neighborhood. Even some members of the HOA attended, eager to show their support and learn from her expertise. Her efforts didn't stop there. Recognizing that many homeowners might not fully understand their rights or responsibilities when it came to shared land, Sarah collaborated with the HOA to create a Neighbor's Guide booklet. It included information on easements, property maintenance, and conflict resolution strategies. Distributed to every household in Willow Creek, the guide became a go-to resource for preventing future disputes. Sarah's name appeared prominently on the cover, alongside a heartfelt note thanking her for her contributions to the community. As months passed, Sarah's garden transformed into more than just a personal sanctuary. It became a symbol of resilience and reconciliation. Families brought their children to see the vibrant flowers and lush greenery, while others found solace sitting under the shade of her fruit trees. On warm summer evenings, the space doubled as a venue for small gatherings, where laughter and conversation flowed freely. Sarah loved seeing her hard work bring joy to so many people, knowing that her garden had played a part in healing old wounds. Life in Willow Creek returned to its peaceful rhythm, but with a noticeable difference. The neighborhood felt closer-knit, its residents more mindful of each other's needs and perspectives. Sarah no longer worried about hidden threats beneath the soil, both literally and figuratively. Instead, she embraced the future with optimism, confident that the lessons learned from the past would guide them forward. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced in the breeze, Sarah stood at the edge of her garden, gazing at the colorful tapestry of life she had nurtured back to health. She smiled softly, feeling grateful for everything she had endured. Though the journey had been challenging, it had ultimately strengthened her connection to her home, her community, and herself. In the end, what mattered most was the beauty that emerged, not just from the earth, but from the hearts of those who cared for it together.